Our first big composer of the Baroque period is Claudio Monteverdi. He was an Italian composer, a bit of a crossover from the late Renaissance into the early Baroque period. And he focused his initial creative efforts on the late polyphonic style of the Renaissance in writing 4 books of madrigals that are very intense and emotive portrayals of the text of the poems that he used there. In his 5th book of madrigals, he began that with a preface entitled the Segunda Practica, in which he basically detailed the new music that was to come, the new style that was to come from the Italian music, the camerata, the homophonic style that became opera. So the prima practica, the first practice, the old style, the Renaissance style, think of it first and foremost as where the music ruled the text. Again, the text was secondary to the melodic lines being presented, the overlapping imitation of those melodic lines. And then he was thinking of the Segunda Practica that he was starting to work in now as the new camerata style, more homophonic, where the text ruled the music. So the ideas, the arching shapes of the text would help in the word painting and be the focal point of the word painting in the melodic lines that he would write and future composers would write in this same style that we still hear again nowadays in pop songs, folk songs, etc. The style they used specifically in the early 17th century was what was called monody, meaning a one melody, mono and melody, kind of smushed together in one word there, monody. And it's very Italian style, had again the solo voice with some sort of accompaniment behind it, what we'll begin to call the continuo. So it had very strong bass line moving to help progress the music as the melody went on. They only used polyphony in certain cases to help express a text to make it more elaborate, a little more ornate and kind of showy. But otherwise, in this style that Monteverdi was writing in the beginnings of the camerata of opera, was strictly homophonic. So you just had, again, that solid single melody to focus on. In his orchestrations, he did create a couple of cool effects that we use nowadays, probably in a more restrained fashion, but he used first off the string tremolo, which is that very fast back and forth of string playing that you hear as a more agitated, tense kind of style, and he would use this specifically in his accompaniments in scenes where there was some kind of maybe anger or war or something violent going on there that helped kind of portray that style. Another style he kind of invented in his string playing is what's referred to as pizzicato, where strings, violin, cello, instead of playing with the bow, they pluck with just a single finger, kind of like you would if you're playing guitar. So let's talk about his first big opera, La Orfeo, or Orfeo. This came around in 1607. It's thought of as the first masterpiece of opera, and it had very strong characters in drama. It's all based on the old Greek tragedy of Orfeo. And musically, like the ideas I was just talking about, he expanded his orchestration to create those, to incorporate those new ideas, tremolo and pizzicato, but also his orchestra just in general was bigger than what might have been used previously. This is probably still only in the realm of like 16 to 20 players, which compared to a modern day orchestra is small. This song we'll look at, from Orfeo, Tu sei morta, You Are Dead, is a recitative where the lead character is telling the story of what has happened. It's for voice and continuo in this monody style that I was just talking about. Homophonic in nature. Has a little more freedom in the rhythm as he's singing to help her pronounce the kind of somewhat emotive quality of the story that's being portrayed, and helping the the tension and relaxation of what he's talking and telling us about. There's irregular phrase lengths. So for us nowadays, we think of phrasing being in 4s and 8s and divisions of 4 and 8, 16, 24, etc. So there's a little interesting phrasing shape in that category of things, but again, it's really just focused on expressing the text, all about using the word painting to shape and move the melody, the progression of the notes forward. And this was all used to help denote the passionate speech of the actor telling his story of what has happened to him, and any dissonance that you hear in the accompaniment is used a little more freely, but again, it's all there to help elaborate on the text, on the melody that we hear. With the production of Orfeo, Monteverdi received a great amount of fame and success in Italy, but unfortunately for his personal life, he went through a great tragedy not too long after that. His wife died, leaving him with 2 children to raise, and as a composer, a musician, just a father, creating a life for his children. Very strenuous time for him, which you can hear in his music during the time. It's a little more moody, kind of anxious sounding, and reportedly he suffered from migraines during this time period, which could be understandable with all just the stress of a situation like that puts you under. But not to be too down on it, later on in life he did receive some great appointments. For instance, he became the Maestro di Cappella, or the choir master, at St. Mark's Basilica in Rome, which is, during this time period, has to be the highest musical honor in Italy, definitely, in the Catholic Church. You're playing at the biggest church in the land, and you're the choir master of it. So he was held in very high esteem pretty much throughout his life. Finally, he had one last big work, which is the Coronation of Poppea, that he wrote in his 70s, towards the end of his life. And this, it basically becomes the archetype of what we see and hear as modern opera nowadays. Opera seria, the serious opera, had real strong drama and music, more so than Orfeo did, but just kept developing his operatic style throughout his entire life. So Monteverdi, the first master of opera.